it's Mermaid Minnow. Today we're going to be talking about something that is incredibly important for all merfolk to know, and that is mermaid tail care and maintenance. Specifically, we're going to be talking about fabric tails today. So the first thing I want to get across before we jump into some suggestions is no two mermaid tails are made alike. So what I mean by this is different tail makers use different fabrics and have different recommended care for their tails. So just so you guys can see, I will quickly go over some of my mermaid tails. I have the Mertailor Whimsy tails. I have it in this gator as well as an orca tail that you will see later in the video. But so this is a specific type of fabric that is different from a Finfolk neoprene tail. So this is not their new fabric tails. I have seen it. I believe I've touched it. If you watch my Merfam swimming video, I think is what it's called, or something like that, I'll go ahead and put it in the suggested videos up above. But there, my friend who's swimming with me, she is wearing the new fabric. But anyway, this is their old neoprene, so it has different care than their new fabric. And then we also have my Courtney mermaid tail here, my Shop Vancouver mermaid tail. It is a different fabric. It looks very similar to the Whimsy, but feeling wise it feels different. And this is also different from her new fabric that she uses. So she did change fabric recently. I will be receiving my rainbow starfish tail will be in the new fabric. So this will feel different than that. And then it's different than, say, a Fin Fun as well, which is a different, again, type of fabric. So what you need to know is that they're all very different fabric tails, very different types of fabric, so their care sheets are not going to be the same. So what I recommend you do is you read the care sheet that comes with your mermaid tail. Every tail that I have bought, maybe one didn't, I'm not sure, but most of the tails that I have bought come with a care maintenance sheet. If yours does not, I would highly recommend that you email the person who you got the tail from and ask them if they do have a care sheet they can send your way. My Mernation specifically was actually delivered to me by email, so check that as well. But anyway, make sure you're looking at the care sheet. So how do we actually care for a mermaid tail? So both of these care sheets mention something that's really important, and that is to try to avoid rough surfaces in your mermaid tail. So grabbing my gator claw, because this one I have used, I got it back in February of 2019, and it is my most commonly used fabric tail. I use it at the lake most of the time, but it's been used to death, so it has wear. So one thing to be aware of is try to be careful, especially if you're swimming in a pool. Try not to stand in your mermaid tail. So you might recall I did mention in my mermaid tail safety video, again, I will go ahead and put that in the suggested video cards above, that I personally do have to stand in my mermaid tails. So I do try to avoid it, and that's something that I've been working on this year. But because I'm not the type of person who can go really long distances without taking a break, I do commonly have to kind of stop and stand in my tail. So when I'm standing in my tail, I'm trying really hard not to move my fluke around. It's a pause. But I try to avoid that in pools, and I do try to float on my back as often as I can, so try to avoid those rough surfaces. It is going to be inevitable. You will scuff up on the sides of your tail, very common, like right here on the sides where your fluke will hit the wall. I don't know how well you can see it on my Shop Vancouver mermaid tail, but there is a little bit more scuffing here on the sides because I unfortunately, annoying to me, took it to a really rough pool, so it did get a little bit of scuffing going on. But the scuffing is normal. It is going to happen, but try to avoid it. Try not to stand in your tail if you don't have to. Again, if you have to, you have to. Just try not to rub it around a whole bunch. Then also, when you're putting your mermaid tail on, put it on sitting on a towel. Make sure your mermaid tail is also on that towel. So sometimes we have really big flukes, and our big flukes like to go off the towel. It's really important that if you're touching that fluke to the ground or moving it around, that you are placing that on the towel again. So if there's any rough surfaces on the pool edge, because most of the time there is, we don't want people slipping. We want to make sure that we are not rubbing really hard on the mermaid tail. But do know if you do get a little bit of wear on your tail where you get the scuffing, scuffing again is not a horrible thing. It is not too noticeable. So I think you can see it on the heels of this one. Yeah, you can see like two lighter spots right here. And then there's some on like the edges up here. I don't know how well you can see it on the camera from this far, but it's not that noticeable. And when your mermaid tail's wet, you won't see it. So if there is a little bit of scuffing, it is inevitable. Again, say it with me, scuffing is inevitable. Even if we try really, really hard not to scuff our tails, it's gonna happen. But we don't want to create any holes. So all of the mermaid tails where I've stood on them or anything like that, none of them have any holes on the fluke or anything like that, because I'm not scraping my fluke against the floor. It does happen, you do run into things again, but I am not purposely trying to put holes in my mermaid tail. So these are, you know, they're fabric. They're like any other sort of like costume. You don't want to like rub to death your costume because you're gonna cause a hole. So try really hard to be careful of that. Another thing as well is to make sure that if you're wearing a mermaid tail, not to just rag on it, okay? Like, they are a little bit stretchy, so if it's a little tight on you, that is okay. That's not a bad thing, but try not to like yank it on yourself, because we don't want to tear any, you know, pop any seams, anything like that. So be gentle. I know personally for me, the knees is one area where I struggle getting my mermaid tail on. So what I'll do is I'll very gently kind of just pull like little bunches and just gently pull and work with it. Something that can be really helpful is making sure that you yourself are not wet before getting in the mermaid tail. That can cause a lot of sort of friction, and it can make it really hard to get on, or to put the tail on fully submerged too. Sometimes I'll put my feet in the monofin, pop in the pool, pull the tail the rest of the way up. It does help a little bit. So it depends on the type of tail. It's not that way for every tail. Some tails like these, gold neoprene, no, I could not get it on that way, but some of these other tails I can't get away with that. So just gently pull it up if it gets stuck. So that's kind of, you know, a couple of things. Don't yank on it, or be careful around rough surfaces. So the last thing you need to do, and both of these care sheets mention this, I know the Finfolk one did as well, is anytime you use your mermaid tail, you need to rinse it. You need to remember to care for your tail the day of, okay? We don't want the tail to dry and then come back. It happens sometimes, that's okay. But if we can prevent it, let's rinse those tails as soon as we get home. And that's the reminder for me too, because I am the worst at remembering that. I'm tired. I've just swam forever. I just want to lay down on the couch, watch a movie. No, I need to keep it in my habit of getting mermaid tails clean. And I'll kind of explain to you a couple of things that I've done, and we'll go over the process of me actually cleaning my mermaid tail so you can kind of see how that all looked. So why we need to wash our mermaid tails after we use them, and it doesn't matter what type of water you've been in. And the reason being is chlorine, it eats away at the fabric. So we want to make sure we keep the integrity of the tail and make sure that we're not having the fabric be destroyed by chlorine. Lakes. Lakes are full of bacteria. I hate to say it. You've got bacteria crawling on you right now, good and bad. That's normal, okay? But lakes are full of bacteria. You're gonna have grossness, you know? So what you wanna do is keep that tail clean. You don't want it to get gross. You don't want it to smell like the pool or the lake. So you need to wash it, at least rinse it in cold water. So I'm gonna go ahead, I ran ahead and I swam this morning and I washed my mermaid tail. So we're gonna pop that footage on now. So starting out, I first took the monofin out of the tail skin, and I used some Dawn dish soap, and I went ahead and just with my hand scrubbed my mermaid tail. I made sure I got both sides of the mermaid tail inside the foot pockets, and then I rinsed that all with cold water. So when you're washing it, make sure your water is cool or warm. We don't want it to be hot water, because although you're thinking, okay, but like bacteria in lakes, I want to make sure it's hot, you can damage the integrity of the tail if you use any heat with it. So don't do that. And then I moved my fantasy fin into my spare room. It's actually my filming room, and left it out on a couple of towels to dry. So that was that. Then I moved on to the tail in my swimsuit. So what I do is I personally, you know, I'll rinse it off first with some cold water, and then I use this Ivory soap detergent that is specifically, you know, again, check with your tail care maintenance sheet. It may tell you to use some different type of detergent, but the one I use is free of fragrances, and it is also free of any dyes. So it's free and clear. So I make sure that that's not going to impact my tail there. So I'll put some in, and you can see this tail was friggin' gross. It was very, very gross lake water apparently. So we went ahead and I rinsed it a few times. And then after I got it a few times, I let it soak for a little bit. And you know, it kind of varies on what kind of water I was in before. When I was out in my backyard pool with this tail the day prior, it only soaked for about 20 minutes. Today it was about an hour. And when it's in chlorine, I'll do a couple of hours to give it a good soak. So after it's all soaked, we'll go do one more rinse to get any of the detergent out of the tail. And then we hang it to dry. So what I use specifically for drying is a hanging, like a drying rack. So this is really important. You don't want to use something that is going to have your tail flip all the way over or pull all the way over, because it's going to cause a lot of weight on your tail, which could stretch it out. So that's why you can see here I'm being very careful to make sure that the tail itself is relatively, it does have to fold down a little bit, but there's no like big hang anywhere, so the tail is not going to be stretching out. You can see that the dorsal fin is straight up and down, but that's because it's made of some type of foam, and so I want to make sure that gets dry all the way. So it's really important before you store your mermaid tail to make sure that it is completely dry. So with my tail, it's going to be in there for a couple of days. It's not uncommon, you know, whenever we need to use the shower, I'll take it out, I'll put it back in, you know, whatever, but I need to make sure it's fully dry before I put it away with all of my other mermaid tails, so that way I'm not getting any mold, it's not damaging any of my other mermaid tails, all of that stuff. It's really important. Again, do not put it in the dryer. Whatever you do not put it in the dryer, okay? Just let it air dry. Again, it's going to take time, but it's really important that you're not adding any heat to it, because we do not want to ruin the tail, because it is possible to, when you dry it, to ruin the tail. So don't put it in the dryer, okay? Try not to put it in direct sun. If you want to hang it outside, you know, we don't, again, any heat, we're going to try and avoid it. So we don't want fading to the fabric. If you want to put it in indirect sun, that's fine. I just like it in the tub. That's just a good away place. It's inside, there's no bugs getting in it. That's my preference. After all of that, I store my mermaid tails, and what I do for my fabric tails is I fold my fabric tails. So there is tons of different ways that you can fold them. I personally just kind of fold them in half, and then I'll fold them in another half. This is not a good fold. I do try to make sure everything's all lined up, but I'm doing it on camera. And then I'll fold it again, and then I'll set it to the side. So I do fold my fabric tails. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's a little bit different with the neoprene tails. Those do get creases and stuff, so I try to be careful of that. But my other fabric tails, folding them nicely is just fine. And then I make sure all of my fins are folded in, so that way when I pull the tail out, I'm not getting those caught. So just be careful of those things. Store them away in a safe, cool place. So again, they're not in direct sun and they're not getting wet, so not outside in the rain. So yeah, it's really easy to care for your mermaid tail. It can feel a bit like a chore, but the thing and to remember, and the biggest reward, is you get to keep this tail for so much longer. I mean, look at these tails, you know, look at them. They're gorgeous. This one I've only had since the beginning of 2020, and this one I have had since 2019. And this tail has been my staple tail for so long. It's been in pool after pool after pool. It's been in lake after lake after lake. It's been all over the place, and it looks beautiful. It's still totally functional. There's no holes in it, because again, I take really good care of my mermaid tails. I make sure they're clean. I make sure I do all of the things I need to do, because I want to keep these tails. Mermaid tails aren't cheap. We all know that. So you really want to do the best you can do to keep these around for as long as you can. So if you guys like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and comment down below. How do you care for your tails? Again, like I said, different care and tips for the different tails that you have based off of your manufacturer, but maybe you might have some tricks that you might do things a little differently. Maybe you have a different type of drying rack that you use, or a different detergent that you use. Go ahead and let us know in the comments and share kind of what works well for you. If you have any questions as well, go ahead and pop them down there, and I'd be happy to answer them for you too. If you're not already, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel, so that way you don't miss out on any of my content, whether they be swim videos, how-to videos, anything like that. I want you all to see it, so subscribe so you make sure you're seeing it. If you're not already too, you can go ahead and pop onto my other social medias and you can check out my Instagram or my Facebook and follow me there for more content too. I do also have a Patreon page, so if you're not already, you can go ahead and join. As little as $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive content. You get some announcements. I have some fun new mermaid tales coming, and my Patreon Merfam has gotten the chance to see those before anyone else, so those kind of one of the perks. There's bloopers, there's family game night, all types of things. So that is also in the description there if you want to check that out. And that's all I have for you. So I'll swim with you all in the next video. Bye!